Welcome to Muffin Talk.
Kia ora and welcome to Muffin Talk. Muffin Talk is a program by the initiative Titipounamu, Study and Joy. I'm pleased to welcome today Patrick Carolan, who is joining us from the United States. Patrick is a Catholic activist, organizer, and writer. He served as the executive director of the Franciscan Action Network for 10 years. He co-founded the Global Catholic Climate Movement and Catholics Vote Common Good. His writing and activisms are centered on his understanding and belief through Franciscan spirituality of connectedness of all creation and God. Welcome and haere to Muffin Talk, Patrick.
Thank you. It's such a joy to be back with you again.
Thank you for joining us. Well, we are currently celebrating 60 years of the promulgation of Nostra Aetate, one of the last documents of Vatican II. The official name of the document is the Declaration on the Relation of the Church to Non-Christian Religions. Patrick, some people think that Nostra Aetate was the first church action to reach out to Jewish people and to Muslims. You consider yourself as a Franciscan-hearted person, and there is the story of St. Francis of Assisi meeting a Muslim leader during the time of the Crusades. Can you tell us more about this encounter?
Absolutely. It was during, I believe, the Fifth Crusade, which was taking place in Egypt, in Damietta. And St. Francis and a companion traveled to Damietta, Egypt, first to try to influence the Christians to promote peace. He was going there to try to convince the Christian army to, not to be fighting. He wasn't very successful at that. So then he managed to make his way across the battlefield. They were sort of at a standstill at that point in time, and into the encampment of the Sultan al-Kamil. And when he first saw the Sultan, most likely would have been put to death right away in the Muslim encampment at that time. But he greeted the Sultan with the expression, "Peace be with you, peace of God be with you," which is very similar to the Muslim expression, "Assalamu alaikum." And the Sultan was just taken aback by that. And so the Sultan welcomed Francis. And they had some dialogue. We don't really know what was said because there's nothing written about what was said. They had dialogue. Francis stayed about 3 weeks, we believe, in the Sultan's. Now, mind you, the Sultan himself was a very interesting person. He was a very spiritual person in his own right. Sort of, he was Muslim, but I think he was also probably Sufi.
We might just add that Sufis are like, it's a spiritual movement within Islam. I think
Yes. Although they're finding more and more about Sufis who were actually before Islam. There's some stuff being written about Sufis or researched about Sufis that went all the way back to the time of Jesus. The Sultan was a very spiritual person, and he would often invite spiritual leaders of all faith traditions to come and spend time at his house, at his place. He also, on several occasions, tried to bring about peace. He reached out to Christians and even offered to return Jerusalem to the Catholic Church because he felt that this was such a holy place for the Christians that they should have control over it. But at the time, the Crusades, they just wanted to destroy the Muslims. And so whatever happened in that 3 weeks when Francis was leaving, the Sultan tried to give him all kinds of presents, and Francis said no. He was poverty. The only thing he accepted from the Sultan was a ivory horn, which was used to call for prayer, which is still in Assisi. It's actually in this Basilica of St. Francis in Assisi now. And so, again, we don't know what they talked about, but we know what happened after. When they left, when Francis left and he made his way back, the war began again, and the Sultan's armies surrounded the Christian armies, and they captured him. Now, normally, what would have happened is the Muslims would have just slaughtered all of the Christians. But the Sultan, based on his encounter with Francis, said no. And he fed the Christian armies, he helped them rebuild their ships, and he granted them safe passage back to Europe, as long as they agreed not to come and fight anymore. And so here he had a whole transformation. Francis went back, and partly based on his encounter with the Sultan, he changed the rules of the order, of the Franciscan order. And he put in there that the Franciscans were not allowed to try to convert Muslims, that they were to go and live in peace with the Muslims and to understand, we may celebrate God differently, but we're celebrating the same God. And so he, ordered his followers to do that. So you could see the results of what happened with this encounter by these two. The other thing that Francis did was he started a whole call to prayer and started, in the Franciscan order now, they have a call to prayer every couple of hours, just like the Muslims do. So it was this encounter that happened back then because it really brought about the end of the Crusades.
Well, that's 800 years ago.
Yeah, and it kind of changed history because it did bring about the end. And the Sultan did turn over Jerusalem he turned it over to the Franciscans, control of Jerusalem to the Franciscans. And to this day, the Franciscans have custody of the Holy Land. And that's how that happened, was because of the Sultan. He gave the Franciscans custody and allowed them to come and rebuild their holy places. It was just a simple encounter between these two very spiritual people, understanding and recognizing the God in each other and not seeing evil in each other, the devil in each other. And that's what this encyclical is about. It should be about. But we've sort of moved away from that since this was written.
What about the United States? You're in America, you're in United States. There are currently movements to turn this huge country of migrants into a fully Christian country. How well known is Nostra Aetate among the Catholics in your country?
Not known at all. It's rarely mentioned. It's not taught in the seminaries anymore. This is one of the most profound documents. Pope Paul VI came out with it. It was originally started by John the 23rd, but then Pope Paul VI finished and came out with it. And it was when it came out, it was considered revolutionary and transformational. And for a while, people talked about it. And now every 10 years, they pull it out and they say, well, let's have a celebration about this. But they started changing things. And they started issuing more documents, which started going back to the way we were. Dominus Jesus went back to claiming that Catholicism was the only true religion and that all other religions had to, be in line with Catholicism.
I was thinking that all popes since 1965, since the promulgation on the 28th of October 1965, can be quoted with promoting one human family, living together among different religions, reaching out, including everyone. But it doesn't seem like you have that experience, at least in your country, which could be the same in many, many other countries. What could we do in order to make Nostra Aetate part of our DNA?
And you're right that, every 10 years or so they come out with it. I'm sure in a couple of weeks there'll be another proclamation about it. But words are meaningless. It's actions that count. And I think what we have to do is we have to start coming to the understanding that we're all part of the one, that whether we're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, if we believe in one God, we're all part of that God. We're all interconnected with each other. Thomas Berry warned us that when he said, we go into the future as a single sacred community, or we will perish in the desert. And he wasn't talking about us all being Catholic or Muslim or Jewish. He wasn't talking about how we worship, whether we worship on Friday night or Saturday. He was talking about how we see each other in relationship to God and to each other. And we really need to sort of reimagine our faith and reimagine how we see ourselves in relation to all of God's beautiful and wondrous creation.
And I think that your actions regarding environment are some actions that bring us together. Like in our interfaith work in Auckland, we had this creek cleanup where we had people of many different religions all caring for the earth. So we had a specific goal. We're not talking about theology, but about practical parts. But I think that it's important that the Catholics are not afraid of reaching out. We have, for example, in New Zealand, we've produced a document, a little booklet, where we give some guidelines so that people are not afraid of going to another temple, going to a different church, etc.
I mean, I have, my daughter's partner is Muslim, and he's come to church with me sometimes on Sundays. And, lightning hasn't struck him dead or me dead yet. God doesn't come down and condemn him or anything like that for coming in. And he's welcomed in our church. People welcome him. People don't try to kick him out or anything like that. They're not afraid that, there's a Muslim in our church, God's going to, send lightning down to destroy it or anything like that. And I've been to Jewish temples. We about 10 years ago, I worked on a film called The Sultan and the Saint, which was a story of St. Francis and his encounter with the Sultan. And we showed that all around the globe, that film. And I was invited to a lot of the showings of it. And a lot of it was at Muslim mosques. And, sometimes we would show it on Friday night when it was worship time, and they'd have the worship, and then they'd show the film after. And I was invited several times to get up and speak at the Muslim worship, and nothing happened to me. I didn't die, or my soul didn't turn black or anything like that.
Well, we have.
So I think again, it's what St. Francis taught us, that we're all part of the one.
Correct.
And that's the message we would get from the story of the Sultan and the Saint, is the oneness of all of us.
Yes, the one human family, which Pope Benedict also mentioned. He often talked about one human family. In Auckland Faith Council, for example, we have exploring sacred spaces where we go to different places of worship. And we go to this year in October, we are visiting 3 places, the Hindu temple, a Baha'i center, and a Catholic church, and trying to get people not to be afraid of entering a different place of worship, because we are going as an interfaith community, which helps already to break down some of the barriers.
Let me just say, I think, as you mentioned earlier, the whole idea of working together on projects like cleaning up the environment and coming together as an interfaith community and working on that, it helps us get to see each other as people, as individuals, as children of God, and not as a Muslim or Jew or a Christian.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And I'm pleased to have this story about St. Francis back in my mind, and I hope that the listeners also would enjoy to hear that it's 800 years ago. At the time of the Crusades, was very difficult.
And I would urge your listeners, if they're not familiar with the story, there's a lot of books written on it. Paul Moses wrote a great book about it. There is the docudrama that I worked on called The Sultan and the Saint. Let me just say, this is a fascinating docudrama movie that I worked on, because it was done by a Muslim film company. Wow. And so, they invited me to come and join them, and they were telling the story a lot from the Muslim perspective. We always hear that story from the Franciscan or from the Christian perspective. They were telling the story a lot from the Muslim perspective and bringing in a lot of the Muslim culture into that story. So it's a great film to watch.
Well, we can put some links on my website. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Out there, heroic peace is calling. In the bonds of love we meet. For the world a new day dawning, and shines a light to greet. We're singing, this is the day when the hope was calling. This is the day when the light did shine. This is the day